Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of CXO-Talk. I'm Michael Krigsman, and I am here with my good friend, the beautiful and delightful Vala Afshar.
Wow,
Vala?
what an amazing intro. Thank you very much,
How are
Michael.
you today?
I'm doing fantastic.
Good. And we're here with our guest, Mark Fidelman, who is an entrepreneur and an author. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks, Michael. I find it quite amusing that you two are in the same room doing a Google Hangout.
I know, it is kind of funny, isn't it? So, Vala, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I was traveling this time last week, coming back from Germany, and it's good to be back doing our CXO-Talk.
And I was in San Francisco this week, and I had an excellent time. It was 85 degrees.
What were we doing in San Francisco?
It was quite interesting. I attended an Oracle analyst event, so they brought together about 100 industry analysts, and that was a lot of fun hearing what Oracle is doing. And then I have been working with a bunch of enterprise startups, advising them on marketing strategy and positioning, so that's good fun.
That's great. That's great.
But we need to dive in. It's CXO-Talk time. So Mark, you wrote a book about the power of social in business, and the book is called Socialized. So tell us a little bit about the book, the main theme, and in the first place, why was it necessary for you to write this book?
Yeah, these are all great questions, Michael. Thank you. But you know, the book is about how you create what I call a social business, and that's inside and outside the organization. And the main theme of the book is, you know, you have to adapt to how your customers, partners, employees are now interacting and doing business. And, you know, not just now, but especially into the future. Most of probably your listeners don't see it yet, but those on the front lines, Vala, yourself, me, we see what's going to happen in business going forward. I mean, just this Google Hangout is representative of what's going to be commonplace 3-4 years from now. Everybody's going to be doing this. So what I wanted to do was provide a playbook for those looking to know what's going to happen next and give them kind of the plays to prepare for it. So that was essentially why I wrote the book.
And what were the key? What were some of the key lessons that you looked at as you were writing?
Well, first of all, I interviewed probably 150 different executives, and these are the social executives that are actually building social businesses. And it really comes down to creating what I call an adaptive business. And that's a business that responds to change. It listens not only internally to its employees, but externally to its partners and customers and so on and so forth, taking that information, learning from it, and then adapting to it, whether that's messaging, whether it's a product, whether it's internally, how they collaborate better. All I'm doing in this book is showing you how to create that organization and how to profit from it and reduce your costs internally. That was the focus.
Got it. Yeah, you wrote in the first chapter, I mean, very strong language, you know, guiding executives like CIOs, CMOs, CDOs, and it was titled "Adapt or Die." And again, in the book, Socialize. So, as you're a prolific Forbes writer, and you're covering mobile and social technologies, is that the main takeaway that you want to get to executives running businesses, that if you're not mobile and social, you know, you may not be around for you know, in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not just mobile and social, although I think those are key elements. It's about using that information to become more adaptive. And if you look at history, you know, it's littered with innumerable organizations that have failed to adapt to their changing market conditions. And everything is changing right now. Customers, partners, employees, they're all adapting to this new social and mobile world. And if you're not doing that, you might end up like Polaroid or Kodak or Woolworths or Montgomery Ward's, Tower Records. I mean, I could go on and on. Circuit City. All these companies didn't adapt to their marketplace and were disrupted, not by social and mobile, that will come, but they were disrupted by internet technologies, by digital technologies. They didn't adapt. So I provide the playbook to show you how to do that and how to be really successful at the top of your game.
Yeah, I just read a Brian Solis post covering Fortune 500 companies And I think the Fortune 500 list, if I'm not mistaken, 1953, 55 was the original list, and I believe there's only 71 companies that are still in business. So you're never too big to fail, never too small to succeed.
That's correct. I subscribe to that.
Go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I know. I subscribe to that completely.
When you talk about an adaptive business, what does that actually mean?
So, I mean, like anything else, let's look at human beings or animals throughout the years. I mean, if you look at the history of human beings, it's kind of a bush. It's not really a tree as it's sometimes characterized. Well, I guess it can be a tree. But human beings have branched off into what we are today. We're like the last remaining species of the humanoids. Now, I'm not an anthropologist, so I don't know the correct terminology. But it's been experimentation after experimentation after experimentation all throughout history. And it's taken a long time. What I'm saying today, in order to be adaptive, is businesses have to do the same thing, but they have to do it in real time. They have to do it now. But they need the right tools to do it. And the tools are the social tools, the mobile tools, the right culture, the right mindset within the organization. It's no longer... You're no longer going to succeed unless you're a monopoly or a government organization if you have a command and control type of system, because there's too much knowledge that's embedded within the employee base, your customers, influencers, partners, that you can now get access to. So if you're not getting access to that, then your customers are, and your customers are going to be far more competitive than you with all that information and the ability to take action on that information. So that's what I mean by being more adaptive.
Is that a cultural style? Is there a technology component? How do you connect the cultural and mindset dimension to the technology dimension?
Yeah, I call it CAST, and that stands for Culture, Analytics, Social Media, and Technologies. So you got to have the right culture. There's no question. If you have the wrong culture, I kind of laughed when you talked about going to Oracle in analyst briefing. I just know within Oracle, you cannot be on social media. I mean, there's one or two people maybe that have access to social media and can do it without approval, but nobody else can. I kind of laughed about it.
Wow.
Anyway, so they don't have the right culture, right? And that might be changing, for all I know. Then you have to have the analytics. It's critical that you understand that, hey, what social information you're putting out there, or what social information is coming in or you're tuned into, what does it all mean? So some people call that big data. I just say it's a lot of data that you've got to sift and analyze and filter properly. And then social media, three of us are very good at this. It's understanding how to use the right tools for the right job, for the right objective. And then the technologies. You got technologies like SharePoint, Yammer, Jive, all of these technologies that are helping companies understand what their employee, or giving the opportunity for employees, customers, partners to participate, to collaborate, to communicate. You've got to provide that technology now as well. So I call that CAST, and I think if you've got CAST embedded within your organization, you're on the right road to becoming more of an adaptive enterprise.
Mm-hmm. So the necessity, if I can recap what you said in terms of becoming a social business, you mentioned control. Seems like control is more of an illusion. You really need to collaborate, and there has to be co-creation of value for you to be relevant and adaptive. You also mentioned data. I think that most businesses, and we've had other guests on the show that talk to and give advice to executives like CIOs and CMOs, that if you're not analytical, if you're not data-driven, you don't have the right insight, you can't produce the right decisions and actions in time to delight your customers. What is your thoughts in terms of the importance of data? And my sense is that the enterprise, we're drowning in data, and it's not necessarily knowledge that we can action to help our customers. What advice do you have for CIOs and CMOs or business in general to be more data-driven?
Yeah, I think you hit on a few things that I want to talk about. One is, what are your objectives? So once you have the objectives, then you look at the data properly and filter it properly. But you also have to be able to gather it properly. So let's assume that you've done all that. You've gathered it properly, you've got your objectives, you got everything lined up. Then as you're looking at the data, what I recommend my companies that I consult for do is kind of A/B test it. Say, try this particular message, or, put your product on this platform, or what if we did this or that. The whole point is you're listening to the response, and after 200, 300 tries, you finally understand what works for your particular customer for a particular objective. So that's how I like to use data. I like to use data to kind of refine what I'm doing so that I can perfect it in the future.
So an iterative process. Leverage data to make sure you're aligned with your purpose and objectives, and then pivot when you need to.
That's correct.
Okay.
And it's an ongoing process because, tastes change over time.
Right.
And disruptions come in. Yeah.
This notion of listening seems like it's a critically important point.
Yes.
Do you want to elaborate on that one? Why is listening so important?
It's like anything. When you are talking to your customers, or let's say you enter a crowded room, and these are all potential customers of yours, or partners, or anybody that could impact your business. I mean, if you're the only one doing the talking, what are you going to learn? You're not going to learn much. I mean, you might be able to judge the response of everybody, but sooner or later, people are going to get upset you're the only one talking. And two, you're not going to learn from a couple things. One, what's important to the attendees, and two, how your messaging is resonating amongst those attendees. So there's two critical things that are missing if you're not, and let's translate this over to from the analog world to the digital world. If you're not doing that on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever your customers are hanging out, you're going to be in trouble in the long term.
All right.
So in a sense, the point of the data, one of the key points of data, is as a kind of proxy, so to speak, for the listening, or maybe a proxy is not quite the right word, but the data is that form of listening to tell you what's going on, but to separate out your own biases and idiosyncratic way of thinking in order to have an accurate sense of what's taking place, so that you can then respond in the best possible way.
Yeah, I think that's right. And just to add to that is, put out different responses and see how people react to it. So you can find the best one. They might react well to my first message, but maybe there's another message they'd react even stronger to. So those are the things that I look for.
Now, I didn't attend the Oracle conference, but I do regularly attend the Salesforce.com Dreamforce event that they have. And what I see when I'm at the conference is first of all, you have the executives that are engaged on social media, including all the way to the CEO. You have obviously the employees that are engaged. You have a command center. They literally have command center where they're monitoring the social activity of the speakers, the attendants. You mentioned in your book the social business and the various components from executive involvement all the way to command center. So what's the message here? Is Salesforce the model that companies should follow in terms of social business, or is there any other best practices based on your extensive research writing the book that you could share with us?
Sure. I do like the way Salesforce does it. I like their command centers. There's plenty of other companies like IBM and Cisco that do it as well.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that executives are involved in social media is critical, and I have written about this, and there's plenty of studies about it, especially coming out of IBM, because like any organization, most people don't want to be the messenger of bad news. So the CEO or any CXO, given this is a CXO show, typically isn't receiving all the information that they need to receive. Now, if you're on social media and you're able to fine-tune that both internally, because internal is just as important to me as external, internally and externally, then you could find out the information yourself. You don't have to rely on mid-level managers or employees to feed it to you, because chances are they're not going to.
Unfiltered.
Unfiltered, but also, you're probably only seeing the rosiest picture possible coming from particular people because they're worried about their job, or maybe there's a cultural challenge in the organization. Whatever it is, they're typically not getting the most accurate, unvarnished picture of what's going on externally and internally.
So you're saying that that social media allows the executive to have a direct connection out to customers, out to prospects, out to whoever's talking about the company.
It is, and I'd also state that even more importantly, because I think half the job of a CEO is to be able to communicate the value of the organization, the mission of the organization, internally and externally. Social media provides that platform for that male or female to do so, right? I mean, that's critical. That's never happened before. It's only been in the last 5 years where CEOs have been able to do it.
So is that what people mean when they say humanizing the business? It's that you're accessible, you're communicating, but there's a person. It's not a logo. It's people in a company at all levels, including executives, who share their beliefs and are willing to listen to what the market, the employees, customers, and partners have to say.
Well, I think that's definitely the future. It should be today. I mean, I want to think of a person, not a logo, when I mention, say a Salesforce.com, and I do because I know plenty of people at Salesforce that I can relate to. But I also want to do business with people. I don't want to do business with a logo. So if I understand there's a lot of experts within your organization and I correspond with them on social media, I build what's called the trust equation. I trust that organization more because the person I'm relating to understands who I am, what my needs are, and knows how to deliver a solution.
You call it a village in the book, right? Is that the right?
The village is more the internal. So, you remember the villages of old where everyone knew who each other was and who the experts were.
Right.
That is part of it internally. Externally, it's more of this digital network, is what I call it. Yeah.
What about the role of trust? That seems to be an absolutely foundational element of all of this.
It is. I mean, there's really 4 elements of trust that I've been able to identify, and it's pretty extensive research. I'll probably feature it in the next book. But for me, trust will become more and more critical. People aren't going to want to buy from companies they don't trust. It's even easier now, be even easier in 2 years to see which companies, which people are trustworthy. You're going to have to be trustworthy or you're not going to do business with anybody. It's going to be completely transparent within 5 years.
What are some of the significant pain points or the challenges that companies face when they undertake this type of social business transformation?
Number one on the list that we were able to identify with our research of 150 executives was culture. There's really 5 culture types. 3 of which I recommend you can start a social business. 2, I'd say forget about it. You got to change the culture first. So culture is number 1. Number 2 are executives that are still playing from the old playbook, meaning they got to where they got at the CXO level because they played from an old command and control playbook where people were stabbing each other in the back. They were doing nefarious things to one another in order to that level. So the last thing what they want to do is, bring sunlight into a situation like that. So that's number 2. And then number 3 is kind of this technical deficiency where people within the organization don't understand how to use these tools properly or tactfully, and they fall down and the company, overreacts and throws it all out the window. So those are the top 3, Michael.
It's funny, right now that you talk about it this way, right now I'm in the middle of preparing for a CIO workshop that we're delivering in Atlanta on May 31st, and we've divided a certain amount of the content up into what we call old style techniques and then what we call the rock star CIO techniques.
Right.
And it kind of breaks out just as you were describing, and a lot of it is culture and mindset. But I think the challenge becomes if you have a senior executive who gets it, so to speak, how does that person bring together the entire organization so that the organization is becoming adaptive? And obviously this takes time, but how do you do it?
Yeah,
it's a daunting task.
It is a very daunting task. So you can ask 5 different people and get 5 different answers, but one of the strategies I found that has worked remarkably is what I call the red rope strategy, which is invite, let's say in a large organization, 100 people that understand social media and how it can impact a business. and you bring them all into their own community, and you don't let anyone else in. But you let all the successes leak out. So people are starting to clamor to get in. And eventually you just open it up, 100 at a time, 200, 300, and people start to, it's a mad rush into this community or internal intranet.
Right. Yeah, we did a similar thing in our company. Last year we were named one of the best places to work in Boston. And we have an extended leadership team in our company, group of volunteers across the different lines of business. We call them the extended leadership team, and they absolutely help, guide and make sure that we're following our core values and guiding principles. I absolutely believe in what you just said. Okay, great. And then as a follow-on, Vala and Michael, there's gamification, where you gamify in the short term, because I don't think gamification works long term. In the short term, you reward people for filling out their profile, which is, we've found, is the #1 thing that you can do to get people onto a particular platform. Because once the picture's there and their name's there, people start interacting with those avatars more so than if your picture isn't there. It
becomes personal.
Becomes personal. Right.
If your picture is there and your name is there, then it's like a reflection of me.
Right.
It's a reflection of yourself.
But I would caution the enterprise or business of any size, if you don't have the right culture, and my definition of culture is what happens when the manager is not in the room, doing the right thing at the right time in the absence of authority. If you don't have the right culture, gamification or gaming techniques could really backfire on you. You have to make sure that you're modeling the right behavior and that you're collaborating at all levels in the organization, so they understand that the competitive nature is trying to serve a purpose.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you got to have the right culture, no question.
Right. Well, you actually, Mark, at the beginning, one of the points you made was having some clarity around what your goals are.
Right.
And it seems to me that that's what Vala is really alluding to, that you have to know what it is that you're trying to actually achieve. Seems to be the starting point.
Right.
Yeah, and the other important thing to bring up right now in our research is that 40% of the individuals within a company don't understand what the objectives are or strategy is to another reason to become a social business. Because in a social business, everybody's socializing information on a regular basis. But 40%, can you imagine if you're a football team and 40% of the players don't know what the play is?
Right.
No, but that's what's going on in our organizations today.
So we have a question from Twitter. Actually, we have a few. Somebody asks, if you're the only one doing the talking, then what are you going to learn? Actually, I think they're quoting you.
Yeah, they are. They are. The question they have is, do you think gamification will work in the long term in business?
I don't, because I think gamification is kind of a short-term measure to get people to change behavior. And they get rewarded by being put on leaderboards or cash prizes or whatever it is that motivates the employees. But over time, I don't think it works unless somebody is incredibly interested in whatever it is that you're gamifying. So it's any game, right? I mean, any game that you play, you grow tired of over time. But you can continue to gamify different things in order to move employees and change their behavior. That works. But I think if you look at Dr. Michael Wu, who I respect a lot, works at Lithium, he'll tell you it doesn't work in the long term, and that's been my experience as well.
Well, do you think companies that maintain balanced performance scorecards for their organizations, where they define a set of key performance indicators to measure the overall impact of the individual and the organization, and then they tie compensation and promotions and bonuses to it, is that not a form of gamifying the system, where there's a clear measure and then capturing the results and then rewarding accordingly?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the balanced scorecard approach, and I do like giving bonuses, MBOs, what have you, for achievement. But even the balanced scorecard, as you know, changes quarter to quarter typically, unless they're long-term objectives.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's a form of gamification. I think that's an effective one because it's not the same one over and over again. It does change over time.
Got it.
So we're halfway through this episode of CXO-Talk. I'm Michael Krigsman, and I am here with the smart and beautiful Vala Afshar, and our guest today.
And I thought I needed a haircut, so this is great.
And our guest today is author and entrepreneur Mark Fidelman. And follow us on Twitter. The hashtag is #CXOTalk, #CXOTalk, CXOTalk with no space. And you can send us your questions on Twitter as well, either for me or for Vala or for our guest, Mark Fidelman. Mark, are there examples of companies who have done this well that you can point to?
Well, at the top of my list is IBM. They not only kind of preach it, but they live it, and they're developing new things internally that I watch on a regular basis. I mean, one example, which I love, is the fact that they're making their subject matter experts very visible externally. So they're looking at who are the experts that they can take, and even if they can't write, even if they can't go on video, even if they can't do a podcast, they assign internal reporters or external reporters to talk to them to get their story out so that that story resonates with their prospective customers. I think that's brilliant. I think that's something every company should be doing.
I was at a conference 2 weeks ago, and I heard Sandy Carter talk about the social strategy and becoming a connected company with IBM, and I was thoroughly impressed. I also, I read a MIT Sloan profile of IBM. Here you have a 100-year-old business, 430,000 full-time employees and about 70,000 contractors. They have 40,000 bloggers that help communicate the brand promise for IBM. And this is a company that hasn't produced a consumer product in 10, 15 years. So it's if a company of that size can be social, there's really no excuse for any other company in the world today. I agree.
Yeah, that's a great point. 40,000 content creators, and guess what? Some of those content creators are on tier 1 publications for their industry.
Right.
Another thing I advocate is getting your best writers into the tier 1 publications. Now, they're not going to be able to write about your own organization, but certainly they can help set the tone of the industry and help set what's important to potential customers in the industry. And a little bit of research will find, okay, this writer works for IBM. Perhaps we should talk to them offline.
Right.
So you're really talking about a thought leadership approach, but I think it's very important to point out that there is a big difference between marketing writing and thought leadership, because if you start putting out basically marketing material under the guise of thought leadership, well, you're going to lose a lot of credibility and trust very quickly.
Yeah, I agree completely. You have to talk as an expert, and you can't be pushing out marketing messaging. But I think there's, most of us are pretty tuned into that, and we filter it out without following those particular people. So it is about putting out, what you deem thought leadership or expert content, and that's really the critical difference between the two.
Now, in your book again, extensive case studies, and you cover mobile and social with Forbes. And again, as I said, you write quite a bit in terms of covering those technologies. Getting back to this social revolution that's taking place in business and the fact that you say adapt or die, you talk to a lot of CIOs, CMOs, and CEOs. Is there an executive that, based on your extensive research, is championing the social revolution? Can it be the CIO? Do you have examples of CIOs that are really, leading the social revolution inside their businesses?
Yeah, I think, from a technology perspective, certainly. I mean, if you look at an Oliver Boostman, who used to be at SAP, he did it really well. CIOs typically, for me, are the people that are championing the technology, the platform internally in order for the company to become social internally. Some, like Oliver, are very smart because he goes out and reaches analysts, journalists, customers on social media to really understand what their organization should be creating or should be building internally in order to best serve them. So I really liked his approach, and I think there are other CIOs that are doing that now as a result of an article I published last year about what the top CIOs are doing who are social. So you probably have much more updated information than I do on this, but if you're looking for that CIO, I point to Oliver every time.
Right. No, he's great. Actually, we're very fortunate. Michael and I are going to be speaking to Kim Stevenson CIO for Intel next week, and I consider her just brilliant and super social. You know, someone who with video blogs, someone who's contributing on Twitter, and really sharing her beliefs and the vision and direction of Intel, which I applaud.
Yeah, I certainly she ranks at the top of the list, especially this year. We've been tracking them all. We just haven't published the new results yet. But Kim will be an excellent guest.
Yeah, I'm certain of that.
What about advice that you might have for some of the software vendors that are developing these tools? Because although the tools are not really the key thing, as you said, it's the underlying culture, the underlying having clarity around the business goals,
right,
and so forth. The tools are important in terms of enabling the communication, right? There's the channel, enabling the channels for communication. So any advice to software vendors, enterprise software vendors who are putting this stuff out?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not one of these guys that says, you know, the technology doesn't matter. I think it's critical. I mean, the technology provides a platform for us to communicate more easily and collaborate and everything else. So my advice for vendors is keep it simple, you know, make it simple, provide feedback in terms of data. I mean, I think that's the critical part is, hey, I'm nervous, if I'm new, I'm nervous getting on social media. You know, let me know if I'm doing it right or wrong, or how my message is resonating, or how my communication is impacting other people. You know, what if I send a message out, is it resonating with my target audience? I mean, all this this data and this information, I'd like to come back at me to tell me what I'm doing well or not doing well. So that's what I think it's not built in to some of these platforms.
So you want simplicity and you want data.
Correct.
Are there other companies who are doing a really good job that you want to highlight?
In terms of simplicity and data?
Either in simplicity, either software vendors, or I was thinking about companies who are going through the social transformation.
Yeah, I think one company that's making things easier, in full disclosure, this is a client of mine, but it comes top to mind. It's called Nestivity, who are turning Twitter into more of a community. So like Facebook fan pages for Twitter. So Nestivity's made it easier to look at Twitter and to use Twitter, I think, in the way that most people want to use it. At least most businesses want to use it.
How are they making it more simple? As a power Twitter user, you piqued my interest.
Yeah, instead of it's a thread of discussion around your brand, a topic, whatever it is. Instead of having to search through a stream, as you and I probably use Hootsuite, right?
Yeah, that's one of the tools I use. Yeah.
So instead of having to kind of figure out where everything is in the social streams, it brings it all into one place in a thread of discussion. You can ask questions, get responses. So it's like kind of like Quora meets Facebook fan page.
Oh, wow.
And then there's a whole customer service element to it as well, and it keeps that conversation forever. It doesn't disappear in 60 days. So it really is the Facebook fan page for Twitter.
Now, you recently started a company called Rainforest. Tell us about what the company does and your goals.
Yeah, thanks for asking. It won't be released until August, but essentially,
August, okay.
Yep, it is the first and only influencer engagement platform. Meaning, if you've used Elance, where you can go hire people, get them to do things, everything's tracked, monitored, and then you pay them at the end. We're doing that for experts and influencers. So yes, today you can go to platforms and find influencers, but you'll never know, or experts, you'll never know whether they want to work for you or not. You have to undergo kind of a lengthy engagement to get them to respond to you, and then to set up the work project and to work for you. We make it very simple. You can hire 50 at a time, one at a time. We handle all the payment arrangements. If there are payments, there doesn't have to be payments. And we track and measure all their activities, and we even track and measure how effective they are as an individual.
And what industries are you covering? Influence in software, hardware, enterprise, IT, marketing?
Any and all industries. It's across the board. It's in different countries. It doesn't have to be somebody on social media. It could just be a connector. Let's say you need to set up a business in Argentina. Well, we'll have the person that can make that happen for you very, very quickly. We make that connection for you.
Who defines influence? Is it a community yourself, your committee, your board?
So we have 3 or 4 companies that we're working with. I'm trying to get the 4th behind the scenes to do kind of what does it mean to be influential online? This is a whole other discussion we could do.
Right.
It comes down to trust and context. So we think we've developed a formula to get you in the right ballpark. We can't get you the right seat, but we can get you the right ballpark. So we'll present the ballpark to you, and then you can decide who you want to work with or who you don't want to work with.
But what about but what about companies like Gerson Lerman Group?
Yep.
And there are others as well that seem to do exactly what you're describing, at least on the surface.
Well, Gerson Lehman does experts, so you could hire a nuclear physicist to come work for you, but it's not an online transparent platform. You have to work with them directly in order to get that information. So that's fine. We'll have experts. But our focus is going to be transparency and more of the influencers, people that are promoting what it is that you want to promote. But if you need an expert in something, we'll have the experts there as well.
And the company's going live, you said in August?
In August, yeah. We're planning on launching at South by Southwest is starting a new event called V2V on August 11th, and we're going to launch there.
That's great.
Yeah.
I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Getting back to this notion of culture, let's kind of switch gears for a moment. Do companies need a chief social evangelist, or is it the CEO's job to kind of lead the charge? How does that happen?
Good question.
I think companies that haven't fully become a social business where they've empowered all their employees to become social absolutely need a chief social evangelist. Even if they have empowered their employees to do it, somebody needs to take the ball and learn about these new technologies, learn about techniques. It would also lead everybody else down the social path. So yes, I think every company should have one. It could be the CEO. There's nothing wrong with it being the CEO. I think it can be time consuming, and I know the CEO is probably spending the majority of his time just managing the business. But it could be the CMO. You could designate somebody to do it part time. I think though, in the long run, what I mean by the long run is just the next couple of years, you're absolutely going to have somebody that's doing it as a separate activity.
And this is not a chief digital officer. This is not somebody who's thinking about mobile social cloud. They're strictly thinking about improving employee and customer engagement.
I believe so today, yes, until the skills of everybody else come up to a point where you no longer need this person. Yes.
And you think it's best that there's actually a designated person with that title?
I do, yeah. For now, and I have the right to change my mind in the next couple of years. For now, most organizations need it. I can measure engagement. I just did a study on Forbes. I can measure engagement, and I know that a lot of companies, 70% of them, still aren't responding adequately to people that are talking about them, engaging with them, asking them questions, so on and so forth.
I'm a big fan of Dion Hinchcliffe's work, and as we all know, he's like one of the top experts when he's talking about social business transformation. But at this point, and I know he covered this topic, but I don't remember if he advised in terms of having a social evangelist or not. I believe he's in line with your thoughts that in the long run, businesses need to have a focused effort. But I do know it was a topic that he covered as well. Personally, I think that in large organizations, I mean, our company's 1,000. I think it's important for some, a C-level executive to carry the torch, because you said leadership is example. So I also believe, and I think you said this earlier in the show, Mark, that if your executives are not social, then you're not a social business. And it needs to be, embodied at the highest level in the company. So I think I agree with your statement.
So, go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, in a smaller organization, it could be a dual role. But large organizations, and ideally, it's a separate person, because there's so many things you can do as a chief social officer: lead generation, getting the message out, making people trust the organization more. It's to me, it's a critical role.
Is there any company, large, medium company that you can talk to that has a chief social executive?
Yeah, I would look at Sandy Carter. You mentioned her earlier at IBM. I mean, you go to her book signings and it's out the door. It's unbelievable. You know, and
I think 4 million people read her blogs, if I'm not mistaken.
Whatever it is, it's just amazing, and she's just promoting, you know, the IBM message, and she does it in a way that's engaging, and obviously it's not marketing. So, yeah, that's one. There are probably many others. Monty over at Ford. I think he does an excellent job.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, he's got a very high profile as well,
Yeah, I agree.
as does Sandy at IBM. So we're running out of time, but before we go, you're the conference director at the Business Next conference. Tell us just very, very quickly, briefly about the conference and what's coming up for next year at the conference.
So Business Next Social was about bringing social business people, customers, analysts, press together. Next year, you know, I think I'm going to do something different, maybe around influencers and marrying kind of influential people with brands and agencies. So, you know, we should be in touch about that and what we finally come up with.
Great.
That's great. I enjoyed the conference. I thought it was very robust in terms of content. Michael and I spoke with Robert Scoble about, you know, mobile, social, and cloud and data technologies in enterprise, and it was an excellent conference. So kudos to you.
Great.
Great.
Excellent.
Well, it's about the time again where we end this episode of CXO-Talk. I am Michael Krigsman with my co-host Vala Afshar. Vala?
Michael, great job.
Another
Thanks.
great time with you. And our guest today has been author and entrepreneur Mark Fidelman. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time and speaking with us.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And I highly recommend Socialize as a must-read if you're, you know, an executive looking to champion social transformation in business. So, well done, Mark. Excellent book.
Thanks, Vala. Thank you, Vala.
And with that, thank you, everybody, for joining us and for watching. And we are going to be here again, same time, next week, Friday. And please join us. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you.